Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today I would like to ask you another question about what your favorite films are in a particular genre. And so thus far I have asked about your favorite horror films, and I've gotten a lot of great responses about that. And I've also asked about your favorite comedies, and so I've gotten a lot of great responses about that as well. And so now I'd like to ask about this question, which is, my dear friends, what are some of your favorite science fiction films? Now, please feel free to interpret the phrase science fiction as broadly and as liberally as you would like. So science fiction, science fantasy, that sort of thing. What are some of your favorite science fiction films? I would love to know your answers. Please feel free to let me know in the comments section below. And also, please feel free to read the responses of others. I think part of the fun is to check out what other people have to say, and please feel free to respond to them. If there are people who mention a particular film that you also like, let them know. I think just letting them know is again part of the fun, and so I hope you enjoy this. Once again, the question is, what are some of your favorite science fiction films? Now, I asked about horror before, and sometimes, horror and science fiction are complementary to each other, but at the same time, they can also be quite separate and distinct from each other. And so I did get a number of science fiction titles in the horror video. But let's talk about the science fiction genre itself. And I think, once again, there are many different types of subsections, many different offshoots, perhaps, from the main body of the genre itself, which is, again, another indication of how malleable and how long-lasting this kind of genre is. I think one of the great classics, of course, is Metropolis. From Metropolis all the way to something like, say, I spoke about it recently, The War of the Worlds, and then going on to, say, something like Star Wars and the like, and the rest is, as they say, history. I have some personal favorites myself. I was speaking about the film Blade Runner with a number of people, and I haven't spoken about Blade Runner on this channel. I really should, because it's one of those films that has a long lasting impact on me. And as I say, I grew up in the 80s, and one of the films that I was just watching over and over again was Blade Runner. And it has a really kind of a really big effect on me, and such that every time I watch it, it really I feel a certain way. I feel very moved on how all the characters lead their way through the particular strands of their narratives until the film reaches its final conclusion, which is an extraordinary event, an absolutely extraordinary event of an absolutely extraordinary film. Blade Runner. But I know many of you have spoken about this film already, and I know that I can anticipate that perhaps Blade Runner will be mentioned quite a bit in the comments, so hopefully that will occur. Also, of course, I haven't spoken as much as I would like about, say, Stanley Kubrick, but Stanley Kubrick, of course, is well known, very well known, for his epic work in the science fiction genre. I think in many ways, perhaps most notably to many, would be, of course, 2001: A Space Odyssey. And then pretty soon after that, A Clockwork Orange. I think two separate types of science fiction that are doing their own thing on the one hand, but there are strands of commonality on the other. And the kind of awe and audacity that is taking place it stands the test of time, and we have seen this thus far in how time treats these films very well, in fact. And so One of these days, I'd love to try to talk a little bit more about 2001: A Space Odyssey in particular. It's one of those miracles of cinema in many ways, and so one of these days, I'd like to try to talk about that if the opportunity affords itself, of course. But those are, I think, examples that I can assume, or I would think that maybe a number of people might mention in their comments as well. But we shall see, of course. There are, of course, many other examples of science fiction genre, etc. I haven't spoken about it as well. I'm also very fond of Star Trek, and I was speaking about Star Trek, the original series, and also the original cycle of films with the original crew. And so I was speaking about that cycle of films with some friends, actually, and we're just talking about the possibilities, right? As Spock says, there are always possibilities, and so again, I remember seeing Star Trek 3 in the theater. So I was a kid just when Star Trek 3 was in the theater, and I remember we were late. My mother and we were late getting into the theater, and so we were just catching the opening. If you know the film, you'll know that it has a certain pre-credits opening, and I was sort of out of context, and so I walked in just as the film was going through its opening. I thought the film had ended, and so we were walking into a film that had just ended. So I was quite confused. But then the story progressed, and it went on its way, which is a brilliant thing. I remember in particular too, just falling in love with the score. Star Trek 2, of course, has that great score, and Star Trek 3. Just brilliant stuff, in particular with the Enterprise and the Excelsior, that very famous scene, and really fantastic stuff. That's a great scene. That's one of my favorite scenes in all of Star Trek, in fact. And then subsequently I saw the films, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, and then Star Trek 5, The Final Frontier, and then Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. I saw all of them in the theater, and those are really interesting experiences, each in their own particular way, of course. I'm a very big fan, in fact, of Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, and I was particularly enamored with the character of the Christopher Plummer character, General Chang, and how he used a lot of and how the Klingon characters were integrating a lot of Shakespeare, right? As Chancellor Gorkon says, you haven't read Shakespeare, you haven't experienced Shakespeare until you've read him in the original Klingon. And my Klingon is not so good, but it's tach bah tach bech. So to be or not to be, but apparently, right? My Klingon is not so good, but apparently, it's very difficult to translate to be or not to be into the Klingon language, because I think please correct me, for those of you who know Klingon, please correct me if I'm wrong, but apparently the Klingon language doesn't employ the verb to be in the way that the English language does, and so I think there's an interesting way that's translated. But anyway, and I love the way that the Shakespeare is used in a very key moment of the film. Just a brilliant stroke. Nicholas Meyer, of course, who is just one of the Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 6, of course, and also a certain degree of involvement in some other films, of course. But what a thrilling film that was. And I remember people cheering in the theater when I saw that, in the theater, Star Trek 6 I'm talking about, and just a wonderful time, an absolutely wonderful time. And it came out in high school, and so I remember we were studying Shakespeare plays in high school, and I wrote a little essay on Shakespeare and Star Trek. I forget exactly what my points were, but I remember my English teacher at the time, I remember she liked it. So I don't think she was a Star Trek fan per se, but I think she was, I tried to make the point about with the full good faith sincerity, and so hopefully it went well. I think it was a good essay, perhaps, but anyway. So those are just some examples off the top of my head as to science fiction. But of course, as you know, it's a very vast field of cinema. And so I look forward very much to hearing what it is you have to say. So once again, my dear friends, what are some of your favorite science fiction films? Please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. As always, I would love to hear what it is you have to say. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you once again for your time, my dear, dear friends, and cheers.